Hey, welcome to Inside the Zone here on Wayne.com. Justin Kinney of Optimum Performance Sports here. And after this Friday, we're 2/3 of the way through the regular season.
We are.
We have made it. Minimal damage thus far.
Largely minimal.
I've been pretty impressed. We haven't had, obviously, the DeKalb Angola situation wasn't good. Belmont situation wasn't good to start the season. But overall, guys are sitting out for a week, out for a couple of weeks. It's been smoother than I thought it was going to be. What's your take on the Corona situation?
I totally agree. I thought it would be a domino situation where Team A got it and Team B had to sit out, but Team B played Team C, and now they have to sit out, and Team D has to sit out because they played Team C. I thought it was just going to be a whole big, snowball effect that continued to get larger and larger. And we had some scares early on. We thought Angola DeKalb, here we go. But we've held it largely together. Like you said, some players missing here and there from teams, but all in all, it's been a successful 5 weeks here heading into week 6.
And I can tell, talking to some of the players and the coaches, they're a little bit frustrated when certain things arise, and even though they haven't had direct contact, they've had to sit out. But that abundance of caution, to me, has helped ensure the fact that we're, by and large, playing football every Friday night. Every team is, pretty much since week 1.
Yeah, better be to be overcompensate than undercompensate, I think, with those things.
We will never know if we overcompensate.
Yeah,
we will only know if we undercompensate. So
no doubt. So
we're still playing football in week 6, so I think we're good.
And I think in the end, despite players and coaches having to sit out here and there, I think every coach, every player is thrilled where we're at right now, still playing football.
It is a positive. And speaking of positive, we talk a lot about the SAC, about the Northeast State. Let's focus on the ACAC this week, because this is where the Highlight Zone game of the week is going to be. We're talking about Adams Central, South Adams. You look at the poll in the state, and I'm so surprised that in like a 12 to 15 mile radius that you can have 2 top 5 teams in Adams County playing, but that's what we have. We're talking about one of the best rivalries in Northeast Indiana. Everybody knows everybody, and we've had some really good games in years past. How does this year's game stack up, knowing what happened last year, where we saw a complete reversal of fortunes from week 6 of the regular season to the regional championship game in this matchup?
Well, everybody can agree that these are the 2 best teams in the ACAC by far. The conference championship comes down to this game on Friday night, and there is a little bit added incentive for South Adams after what happened in the regional last year. Those guys haven't forgotten it. Coach Graham Mosier hasn't forgotten it, but you could say Adams Central hasn't forgotten it either, and they know what worked last year in that regional game. They're going to try to bring it again on Friday and see what happens. But, regardless of what happens on Friday in this game, and I think this is something we took for granted last year, is a 28-point win last year for South Adams. We felt once we got into regional, write Adams Central off. That wasn't the case last year, and I think it's a similar situation this year. Regardless what happens on Friday, if these 2 teams meet up again in the postseason, all bets are off in terms of what could happen.
Now, contrary to popular reports, I do research for these segments. But, in thinking about it and looking at the scores and stats, to be quite honest with you, I know it's week 6 already. I don't know how much we know about these 2 teams. And I know that sounds weird, but you've got 4 blowouts for South Adams, and then a relatively close game of 31-14 against Monroe Central, against a top 10, top 11 team, depending on what poll you look at. And then with Adams Central, outside of the East Side game, in which they lost at home, they haven't really been challenged a whole lot. And the East Side was week 2.
Week 2,
and the Fremont game in week 1 came about like that week. So, I don't know that Adams Central, that we know what we've got really in either of these 2 teams, because quite frankly, they haven't been tested a whole lot.
Right. Yeah, when you look at South Adams, I can guarantee you Coach Graham Mosier really excited to come out of Friday with his starters having to have meaningful snaps after halftime. I mean, he really needed a game in which these guys had to play into the 3rd and 4th quarter because he hadn't had it yet. And eventually, as soon as this week, he's going to have that. So he has that where the guys play past halftime, and also some coaching points too, where when you're beating teams 54-6, there's not much you can command the attention in those meetings when those kids are, we just rock somebody by 50. Well, what does it matter? Adams Central too. I think it's still an unknown with them. If you had to force me right now, I'd say South Adams is the better football team, but we haven't seen South Adams play a team, I think, in my opinion, the caliber of Eastside, to be honest. So all of that is on the table, a lot of unknowns. We know exactly what these teams want to do to win. We just don't know if they can execute it against a quality opponent like each other.
We've got Mosier on Mosier crime. We've got
do.
Michael Mosier, we've got Grant Mosier.
Yeah.
It's too bad Greg Mose isn't coaching in that conference, or else it would just throw everybody for a loop. But when you take a look at what Michael Mosier was able to do in the turnaround last year, it was really one of the great coaching jobs, I think, that we saw last season.
Yeah.
How do you approach this game? Because now you're really on South Adams' radar. They're not going to underestimate you. And conversely, the blueprint is there. They've seen what you've shown them, what you can do to limit them. So they're going to try to repeat last year's performance, and South Adams is going to be ready, having watched that tape and dissected it, I imagine, to the T's, if you will.
Yeah, I think if you talk to Coach Michael Mosier, he'll talk about what they did last year in that regional game, but he also fully expects South Adams to do some completely different things on Friday. So in Michael Mosier's mind, he said, okay, we were really able to take this away last year, but what should we expect South Adams to do on Friday night offensively to mix some things up? And also, I think you have to look up personnel. And if Adams Central can continue to match up like they were able to so good last year and losing a couple guys from that defense, and I think offensively, Dallas Schwaller was humongous for that team last year, particularly in the postseason. Not just his quarterback play, but also his leadership ability in commanding that offense and commanding that huddle. Now it's up to Ryan Black at quarterback to make those same decisions, make those same reads, and bring that same confidence to Adams Central in that huddle that Dallas Schwaller was able to do so effectively in the postseason, particularly that regional game.
Given that, what do you think is the biggest key factor this coming Friday night? Because we've seen blowouts in this series. We've seen games go down to the wire. We've seen everything, I feel like, over the last 4 or 5 seasons between these two programs when they meet.
The lower scoring it is, the better for Adams Central. I think we saw that last year in the regional, 19-7, the win for Adams Central. If they can find a way to limit that South Adams offense to a couple touchdowns, and they have a shot to win this game. If we get into the high 20s, low 30s, and even 40s, that's where I think it's advantage South Adams. I don't think Adams Central can keep up if the score gets that high. So Adams Central needs to come out, protect the football, put together some sustained drives, get points on the board, and then try to keep South Adams from really getting into a rhythm offensively.
Chew some clock on the ground, keep the football. 13, 14, 15 play drives are certainly what Michael Mosier would love to see.
Get points after. So 6 or 7 minute drive without points is not good when you're playing South Adams. You need to eat clock and score points.
Let's talk about the SAC because it got even more interesting. I feel like we say that every week. It's like,
right?
It got a little more interesting.
Yeah.
But it has, because of the Dwenger win over Carroll,
Yep.
you really are talking about a 3-horse race now.
Yeah.
And when you talk about Homestead, Carroll, Dwenger, how do those teams stack up at this point? Because right now it's circular. If you look at the, if you want to do a little Venn diagram or something like that, if you're smarter than me and can do that, it makes the rest of the season really point towards that Carroll Homestead game in October. But how do you see the SAC shaking out right now, where 3 teams are essentially playing for a championship game, or a championship, I should say, and we're not talking about the Snyder Panthers like we have in years past, or Bishop Bluers like we have in years past.
The one similarity all 3 of these teams have is they're all op schools, so that's good.
Oh well, there you go.
I mean, come on.
What better advertising?
Yeah, no doubt. Everybody, all the ops teams in the SAC fighting out at the top.
Columbia City's undefeated too. I know.
Yeah,
there
for
you
sure.
Go.
So we're living large right now with ops on Friday nights. But Homestead controls their own destiny. If they win out, they win it, and they repeat as SAC champions. Carroll needs some help, and Bishop Dwenger, feel like they need help as well. But if Bishop Dwenger, if Carroll goes out and beats Homestead, Bishop Dwenger is in that driver's seat because luckily in the SAC we break ties, so head-to-head will matter. So I don't see this being shared. Right now we're trying to figure that out. I think there's enough football on Fridays in the next 4 weeks to decide this thing where there will be one team atop the conference. And it's such a beautiful conference this year because anybody is capable of beating anybody. We saw Lures and what they did to Northside. We see South and what they did to Wayne last week. And we're already just 5 weeks through the season where we do not have an undefeated team and we don't have a winless team. And the last time that happened in the SAC through the regular season was way back in 1993.
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute.
As the kids say, it has been a minute.
Yes.
You said those three teams are really battling it out. Who do you see taking it home? Because obviously there are, we've seen in the SAC, anything can happen on any given Friday. Mathematically, Homestead has the leg up right now.
Yeah.
But how do you see this playing out?
It's incredibly difficult to predict.
Yeah.
Because even in past
I want to put
years,
you on the spot.
I know, and it's much appreciated for sure because they
so
can
that
point
we can play this back later.
Yeah, we can point to me being wrong instead of you.
Guy?
Yeah, for sure. But the unknown is does a team lose a couple key guys here or there? We saw what happened week 1 with Homestead. We've seen it, with other teams. And does Bishop DeWanger has been missing guys here and there. Carroll's had some kids here and there too, so it could come down to a key player missing here or there. It's tough to bet against Homestead right now, considering them beating Bishop DeWanger in week 4. That came down to literally a foot, and we're talking about a Bishop DeWanger win. And just the way Bishop DeWanger played on Saturday night, and really, at least for 2 quarters, neutralizing Jeff Becker, something we had not seen all season long, that they were scoreless at the halftime break. Carroll was able to open things up a little bit in the second half, but Jeff Becker was continuously under pressure throughout most of that game and having to make throws on the run to keep Carroll in that one. So if you had to bet right now, I'm putting Homestead number 1, but as we've seen week to week, Friday to Friday, we change our minds about not just at the top of the conference, but that middle part of the conference as well.
Yeah, that leads me to this week because you got Northside at Homestead and Concordia at Dwenger. Those are teams where if I saw Northside win it or I saw Concordia win it, no disrespect to Dwenger or to the Spartans, but you'd say, okay.
Yeah, right.
That is possible.
Yeah.
Concordia, when they've had everybody this year, they've been really good. And Northside, we've seen they're capable of putting up big points. If it's a shootout, I mean, Northside can be in it, no doubt, into the fourth quarter, and then who knows what's going to happen.
I mean, if you're Chad Zolman, you're already losing sleep over Northside's offense on that turf.
Yeah.
Are we not? I mean, he's got to be having a lot of restless nights through this week heading into Friday because of what we can see the offense do for Northside. But conversely, we're seeing Evan Ormsby each and every week get better and better and more comfortable at the quarterback position for Homestead. Accounts for 5 touchdowns last Friday. So you're feeling pretty good as an offense of Homestead if you do get into a shootout with Northside. And I don't think that was the case in week 2, week 3 with Homestead. I feel they're in a much better situation with their offense in terms of that balance than they were just a couple weeks ago. So if we do get into a shootout, Homestead perfectly capable of keeping up.
I saw the beginning of that game. He threw a couple of nice bombs, one to Nate Anderson, one to Jared Kissler. But he has a little bit of a Tebow in him.
Yeah,
I appreciate it, man. He's a little guy, got some strength, some upper body, and he just kind of takes off. I liked what I saw from him, and I think he's probably one of the most improved players from week 1 to now that we've seen in Northeast Indiana. Let's move to the Northeast State where Leo has asserted themselves atop the conference, but they have their fair share of people that are trying to knock them off as we move to the rest of the season, and that even includes, you got Belmont this week, Leo travels there. You would expect the Lions to win that, but you got Huntington North at DeKalb, New Haven at Columbia City, Norwell at East Noble. Those last 2 games, New Haven at Columbia City, Norwell at East Noble. How do you see those playing out? Because Norwell really impressed me.
Yeah.
Because our photographer, Ross Kinsey, came back and goes, oh, man, I got there, and it was a blowout. And I was like, wow. So
New Haven was rolling, huh?
I was like, Jakar Williams is tough. He goes, no, Norwell was blowing them out. It was like 43-8. I was like, wow, that's great. Because we know Norwell's defense is good. They were good last year. But now the offensive pieces, Eli Riley, Max Ringer, those guys are really starting to put it together. And it's nice to see.
They are. And then all of a sudden we're looking at going to East Noble this Friday. And you're going, I mean, not saying East Noble loses, but all of a sudden that's an intriguing game. You're like, oh, crap, we got to make sure we have somebody at that game. So what Norwell was able to do last week, I think, was an eye-opener for a lot of people. I think even in the Northeast State, because we talk so much about those big 3, and now maybe the big 3 is Leo, East Noble, Norwell at this point. I know Columbia City sitting there at 5-0. So, yeah, it's
You're going to get
exciting.
Brett Fox fired up again.
I'm just going to continue to throw Columbia City under the bus and devalue them. First 5-0 start since 1968, and I still am doubting. But you look at their schedule, so in no particular order, what do they have this week? They have...
as far as Columbia City goes, they have New Haven.
They have New Haven.
looking to bounce back after 2 straight losses.
Yeah, so then it goes, I think New Haven, East Noble, Leo, Norwell is their final 4 games. So, I mean, conceivably, you know, maybe 2-2 is good. 3-1 would be crazy.
I mean,
I don't know. That's one of the teams that I think with Columbia City, we're still going, how good are they?
Last week didn't help.
No,
I'll say that
it did not.
because DeKalb had been off for a number of weeks, and I debated back and forth thinking about that, if that helped them or not. I mean, I can't imagine it does. Then again, you're super healthy and you have everybody, and you've had a while to game. You knew that was going to be your first game, so you've been game planning. You know, if you're Seth Wilcox for a while. I don't know. Like, I don't know. You went to overtime against a DeKalb team that hadn't played for 3 weeks. So.
Yeah, I know. And, you know, I was talking to Coach Fox on Friday night after that, and he's like, we are not the same team on the road that we are at home. And he's like, I'm even considering putting my guys on the buses and driving around for home games and then coming in to try to help us some way find that sweet spot that we have at home and find it for the road, because they have a couple big road games coming up.
Yeah, they do. I love that new home field, though, that they
Absolutely.
have. It's freaking
Beautiful.
awesome. Let's talk about the NECC. East Side with a big win in the train game, 40-0 over Garrett.
Yeah.
This week you got Busco at Fremont, Fairfield at Angola, which is a sneaky game.
Yeah, that's where I'm
Sneaky good
headed,
football.
man. 7-0 combined?
Yeah, Garrett at West Noble, Lakeland at Central Noble, Prairie Heights at East Side. Let's focus on Fairfield at Angola, because it was just a few years ago when Matt Thacker took over. This team didn't win a game. They were 0-9, and they had to forfeit a game because they didn't have enough healthy players. They only had like 14 healthy players one week. Now, a couple years later, they got a 6-6 season under their belt. I believe they beat Bluffton in the playoffs last year, later in the postseason, later in the sectionals. You're talking about a team that is on the up and up, and Angola looks to be getting back to, after a blip last year, the types of dominance that we saw in the NECC the couple years before that.
Yeah, I mean, we were hyping up Adams Central South Adams as the conference championship game for the ACAC. This is the conference championship game, or at least the division championship game for the big division in the NECC, Fairfield and Angola. Is Matt Thacker and the Falcons ready to compete and contend against Angola? That is at least in the last several seasons, the benchmark in the big school division right now, last year notwithstanding. So is Fairfield ready? He's taken incremental steps with this program since he's taken over. This is the big one. Can you prove that you belong in terms of the conversation with Angola? It's a huge game. And like you said, sneaky. We're going to talk so much about all these other games in the NECC or the NE8, ACAC, SAC. This is the one outside of the Adams County Showdown that has me the most focused, because it's going to tell a lot about Fairfield and where they're at.
And to me, I don't know what we have in Angola yet still, because they missed the 2 weeks. Then you're talking about in the opener, they faced a DeKalb team that we didn't know a whole lot about. Looked really good doing it. They put over 50 points up on the board, which is great. But in the last couple of weeks, you know, they faced West Noble, which we thought might be a contest. It wasn't. West Noble obviously graduated a lot of talented guys last year. And then you're taking a look at last week, they went up to Lakeland. So we haven't seen Angola. Like, we don't know what we have yet in them. It looks good, and on paper it looks good, and the numbers are good. But I know if you're Andy Thomas, like, you wanted to have like a game where you're challenged before you're playing for a conference championship type game.
Yeah, no doubt. And then you look back in that week 1 game with DeKalb, and at first we were like, okay, they handled business, and then DeKalb almost beats Columbia City last Friday.
Maybe it's a better win than we thought.
So maybe it's a better win than we thought. So maybe Angola is better than we thought. These are the kind of things we have to determine when we don't have a lot of sample size.
The transitive properties.
Yeah, so you got to love Angola right now. Tucker Hasselman has played tremendous. Brother Finley Hasselman has been great at the running back spot. So great 1-2 brother punch there with the Hasselman boys. And that defense has been pretty good as well. So a lot of storylines heading into Angola on Friday.
What are you most looking forward to about this week? I mean, it's week 6. We're past the point where we've gotten first impressions, second impressions. We've seen teams with players, without players. We kind of now, at least we think we have a handle on what we've got out there. And now teams are starting to think about conference championships and starting to think a little bit about what they're going to look like come postseason, what they need to do to get ready in the next 3-4 weeks.
Sure. I think it's a little bit of both in terms of we're going to have some conference championship type atmospheres in the ACAC and NECC. But then in the SAC and NE8, I think we're still in a position where you look at the schedule and go, that game could go either way, that game could go either way, that game could go either way. And that's not very many years in week 6 we're in that position. We're usually at this point going, okay, that's the one good game in the SAC, that's the one good game in the NE8, but we're not there right now. It's a lot of good football being played all across the board in both of those conferences, so a lot of uncertainty, and who knows, maybe one of those teams at top at 4-1 gets clipped by a quote-unquote lesser team and sees their SAC championship chances evaporate earlier than we thought.
We shall see this coming Friday night on the Highlight Zone. But for this week's edition of Inside the Zone, he's Justin Kinney, I'm Glenn Marini, and we'll see you next Monday right here on Wayne.com.